Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you're working in life sciences, I'm thinking field excellence, medical affairs, compliance, you live with this core attention every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got this pressure to move fast on really strategic engagements, but at the same time, you've got to have, flawless compliance.
Right. And today we're going to unpack what happens when those two things collide because, honestly, I think most teams are focused on completely the wrong question.
The wrong question.
That's right. I mean, if you ask a compliance officer what keeps them up at night, they'll say things like, did we log the expense correctly? Or is the transparency report ready for submission?
Sure, the tactical stuff.
But those are just outputs. They're second-order questions. They don't actually get to the fundamental risk.
And that, I think, is really the hook for today. We started calling this symptom.
Compliance theater.
Exactly. Compliance theater, it's this whole ritual of, perfectly executing all the administrative steps, filling out every single field on some multi-screen form, getting all the signatures.
For an engagement that was probably a bad idea to begin with.
Yes. The team spends all their energy proving they can do something, not that the thing is actually worth doing.
And the first-order quorum, the one that really gets to risk and value and frankly, reputation, has to come way before any paperwork. It's simply, should we even be engaging Dr. Johnson at all?
And if the answer is yes,
then it's, is this the right person for the right reason at the right time and, with the right structure?
Because when you don't lead with that kind of intentionality, you end up with these organizations where your field teams are spending so much more time just wrestling with admin
than they are having actual scientific conversations.
Which is their job. And that's our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
How do you get from this sort of fear-based, form-first compliance model to a strategy-first engagement model? One where compliance isn't a gatekeeper you have to outsmart,
but a guardrail, a structural guardrail that actually helps you make better, safer, and more profitable decisions.
Okay, so to get to the solution, we really have to dig into the pain first.
You do. You have to acknowledge it. Most of the, let's call them legacy compliance tools, that you're probably running on right now. The systems for FMV, for cap limits, for approvals, they were all designed years ago from this posture of fear.
The core design principle was what?
Stop people from doing the wrong thing.
And when you start with fear, you design systems that, I guess, default to suspicion. Every request is treated like a potential problem.
Like a potential breach, exactly.
So how does that fear actually show up in the day-to-day workflow for, say, an MSL?
Oh, it's everywhere. I mean, it starts with these incredibly rigid workflows. Virtual micro-engagement gets forced through the same 20-step process as a huge international advisory board.
Right.
Then you've got the multi-screen forms we mentioned, forcing people to try and translate all this nuanced account strategy into, a few clumsy drop-down menus that never quite fit.
And we have to talk about the manual fair market value calculators.
Yeah.
The FMV tools, you call them punishment before we started, and I think that's how they feel to a lot of people.
Well, they feel like punishment because the system is asking you to be an administrator, not a strategist. You're manually trying to juggle all these different policy layers at once. You've got regional policy, maybe different currencies, internal annual caps, and then you have to cross-reference all of that against an exclusion list.
And it's never in one place.
Never. You're usually doing that calculation in a separate tool outside your CRM, then copying and pasting the feedback in. You're basically encoding nuance into a system that was built for logging, not for actual decision support.
I've seen it. I've seen teams where you have to enter the same HCP's ID number into 3 different systems just to get one engagement proposed and the fee calculated.
Right.
And if you're that MSL, the incentive structure just completely flips on its head. You learn really fast that proposing something truly innovative or strategic,
right,
well, that's just going to get you blocked or add another 2 hours of admin to your night.
So what do? You take the path of least resistance.
You tick the boxes.
You tick the boxes. You stick to the same old engagements will get approved easily. And just like that, compliance stops being a partner that helps you shape a better decision, and it becomes an obstacle course.
And that's the paradox of compliance theater. You have this incredibly heavy, burdensome process.
And yet you end up with these shallow, low-value relationships because the whole system prioritized minimizing administrative friction over maximizing strategic value.
It's exhausting just talking about it, which is why this strategic shift we're seeing is so critical. It's like a cognitive inversion.
It is.
You're moving away from that internal, almost self-protective question of, am I compliant, which is all about my personal admin risk, to the bigger strategic question.
Which is, Should I engage Dr. Johnson? And if I should, how do we structure it to get the most value, the best scientific exchange?
And that little rephrase, it sounds subtle, but it moves compliance from being this thing in the foreground screaming, stop, Pete.
And it puts it into the frame. It becomes the guardrail. Compliance shifts from asking, can we even do this, to answering, here's the safest, most effective way to achieve your strategic goal.
And that has to have huge consequences for how an organization actually behaves. Can we break down those areas of impact?
Absolutely. So first, it changes who you invite.
Okay.
When you get rid of all that administrative friction, you stop just inviting the safe names, the ones whose paperwork is easy to process.
The usual suspects.
The usual suspects. And you start being able to identify the right voices, the people you actually need for the science, for your evidence gaps, for the patients. You just elevate the quality of your whole KOL network.
So it's quality over convenience. Makes sense. What's the second area?
It changes why you engage. The focus moves away from just, say, filling seats at some big, expensive event to actually building long-term, high-value influence. You're there to gather real insight and feed that knowledge back into your organization. You're building relationships that compound over time, not just hitting a quota.
And the last one is how you engage. So optimizing the actual format.
Exactly. I'm talking about moving toward more focused micro-engagements or maybe digital and hybrid formats that actually meet the HCP where they are.
Instead of just defaulting to that big in-person dinner because, the legacy process is built for it.
You got it. The goal in all of this is just intentionality. Compliance becomes the structure that supports better decisions, not the department that tries to stop all decisions.
That brings us right to the operational difference. Because if I'm a rep or an MSL out in the field, I don't need another black box rules engine that just spits out a red light. I need a co-pilot.
You need a co-pilot.
But doesn't this focus on strategic intent make the audit trail, I don't know, a bit more ambiguous? Are we trading clean paperwork for fuzzy strategy?
That is the critical question, and the answer is a hard no. In fact, this approach, using what we call an agentic co-pilot, actually makes the audit trail stronger and cleaner.
Yeah.
Well, a true strategic AI partner, let's call it EMSA, it has to be intelligent enough to understand the full context, the HCP's history, the account strategy, and all the rules. It has to know the compliance rules, the caps, the thresholds completely without the human having to go check 3 different spreadsheets.
And a huge piece of this has to be simulating scenarios, right? Suggesting better paths.
Precisely. It doesn't just block you, it advises you. Let's make it super concrete. Imagine a rep is planning their quarter and they ask the system, can I invite Dr. Johnson to this advisory board?
Okay, so the old gatekeeper system, it just gives them a red light or a green light, maybe a cryptic error code.
Yeah.
And zero help. The rep is stuck.
They're stuck. They have to go back to square one. Now contrast that with a strategic AI partner. The agent, EMSA, immediately processes all the underlying deterministic rules in the background. It might come back and say, yes, you can proceed. Dr. Johnson is within her annual cap limits, and for this type of engagement, the recommended FMB fee is between $500 and $750.
But the real value add is the guardrail part, the strategic guidance.
Exactly. So the co-pilot might continue and say, however, given Dr. Johnson's high volume of activity in the first half of the year, our internal policy suggests a 60-minute virtual session is the safest path forward.
So it's not just no, it's here's how.
Here's how. He might even say, if you need a longer in-person event, you'll have to justify it by adding 2 specific strategic outcomes to the request, which I can help you draft. And then here's the game changer. Before you even click submit, the system says, I've pre-filled all the required internal documentation and approvals. They're ready for your final review.
Wow. So the actual compliance rules, the caps, the FMV rates, they're identical in both scenarios.
They're the same rules, but the experience is radically different. The rep feels advised, not policed. Compliance just became a clear guardrail that helped them design a better, safer engagement, not an obstacle course designed to trip them up.
And that operational difference has to translate into a real business case. This isn't just about making people feel better. There's a strategic and financial impact here.
A measurable one, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about those benefits. The first one feels obvious, just higher quality engagements. You get rid of those, we always invite them, default decisions.
And you anchor every single interaction in a real strategy or an evidence need. That alone builds incredible trust with your HCPs.
Okay, second benefit.
Efficiency. Just pure efficiency. Less admin, more science. When an agent layer like EMSA is handling all the FMV checks, the caps, the exclusion lists completely in the background, you are reallocating a massive amount of time.
We're talking hundreds of hours a year per person.
Easily. Time that goes right back into the scientific conversation.
And the third piece has to be risk and confidence.
Lower risk, higher confidence. Your deterministic tools, your calculators, your lists, they're still the source of truth for the hard rules. But the agent that orchestrates them applies those rules perfectly every single time. No more human error from manual data entry. Your documentation becomes cleaner and, frankly, much easier to audit.
So this kills the dreaded email chain.
It kills the email chain. We're moving away from, is this okay? Hey, did you check with legal? Did we log this? To a single, clean decision pass. Should we do this? Yes. Okay, how do we structure it compliantly? Click. Approved.
But that kind of orchestration, it needs a pretty specific system architecture, doesn't it? You can't just bolt another system of record on top of the mess you already have.
You can't. You need a system of decisions, not just another system of record.
Explain that.
The architecture has to recognize that compliance has, well, physics. You need those deterministic calculators and policy engines to be the anchor for the rules. But on top of that, you need the agentic orchestration. And that's where a system like Locational comes in. It's built to be an AI-native system of decisions that sits on top of your current stack, your Viva, your SAP, whatever, and it just connects the dots.
So it's not rip and replace. It's making the systems you already paid for smarter.
It connects them. It orchestrates them. The whole goal is to elevate your human teams to be above the loop so they're making the big strategic calls that only humans should make.
And the agent layer, EMSA, is down in the loop, managing the compliance workflow, applying the rules, making sure the documentation is perfect.
And freeing up the humans to focus on the why.
That inversion, that's a whole cultural shift. When the main question becomes, should we engage? Your field teams start acting like strategists.
And your compliance teams shift from being the department of no to being the partners who can say, here's exactly how we do this safely.
Yeah.
It's a massive win for the whole organization. It brings the focus back to what actually matters.
The quality of the science.
And the strength of the relationship.
So to wrap this all up, our core belief here is that the best compliance strategy is actually just better relationships.
And better relationships come from better decisions, which need to be supported by smart technology, not just more forms and more manual effort.
Right.
Look, if your current tech stack is optimized for compliance theater, just for proving you logged everything, you are always going to be playing defense. But if you optimize for strategic engagement, with an AI co-pilot as a true partner,
you get stronger KOL networks, you execute faster, and you have a team that doesn't dread the word compliance.
That is the definition of a structural guardrail. It enables greatness.
Okay, so here's a final provocative thought for you to take back to your team. If your field teams are still operating manual FMV calculators directly, you are structurally, by design, asking them to be administrators first and strategists second.
Think about that.
So start exploring. How could an orchestrator, a system of decisions, sit on top of your existing stack to flip that order, to let your experts get back to being experts?
That's the deep dive for today.
We'll see you next time.